Hi, it's Jan Beta, and today I'm going to try to fix a mistake I made a couple of years ago in one of my videos, and that is this thing. So some of you might recognize this if you've watched my Christmas special, I think 2017 or 18. This is, or was, the original power supply my Amiga 500 that I owned back in the day came with. And yeah, I tried to crack it open to put one of the Meanwell power supplies, like a modern switching power supply, in there. And I kind of did, but I did it in a very destructive way. I broke off all the screw posts and things like that because I didn't realize the screws were actually just hidden behind some plastic discs that were covering the screws, and I didn't realize that and thought I wouldn't be able to get to the screws, so I cracked it open with using some force, and that's the result. I just put some electrical tape on there to hold it together, and it wasn't nice at all. And in fact, I wasn't using this at all ever since I upgraded it, or downgraded in this case. So what I'm going to do today is to just get rid of the old broken case parts that I myself broke and put it in a nice enclosure and add a new, nicer power switch and a nicer mains cable or a mains connector. So yeah, this is just going to be me doing some fixing and some handiwork. So if you're not interested in this, this is going to be pretty straightforward because this is already all wired up basically. Just watch another of my videos or somebody else's video. Yeah, this is going to go, I don't know, I'm probably going to use it for something, so I'm not going to put this into the trash compactor yet. As my new enclosure, I'm going to use one of these nice Bahar Enclosures that I've used a couple of times. These are relatively inexpensive compared to other project cases. They are metal and plastic faceplate, so these are easy to put like switches on or things like that, and drill and file and saw. And this case I'm going to put a ground strap on and have the metal parts of it grounded. This also has some rubber feet. So yeah, I really like these cases. You've seen me use them for a couple of my power supply builds that I did over the years. I'm going to keep most of this, I think. I want to get rid of the original power cable because that's really brown and I don't know, I don't like it that much. I'm going to put a nice IEC connector in the back, and I am going to hold on to this original 5-pin DIN plug cable that goes to the Amiga. I'm just going to probably disconnect this stuff and then connect the other stuff after I drill some holes in the case. Yeah, let me just open this case and see how we are going to arrange things in here. By the way, this isn't some kind of cheesy sponsorship thing. I'm not sponsored by Bahar. Even though they are quite local, I think they are a Hamburg company, which is like an hour drive from here. But yeah, I just like these cases, that's just the thing. They are a two-part construction. The metal parts are top part and bottom part, so we are going to put a grounding strap on both of those. And yeah, as you've seen me doing with my other power supplies probably. The Meanwell industrial power supplies that I'm going to use, I like those very much. They are pretty high quality and pretty robust power supplies. This is an RT65B, which is a 5 amp power supply for the 5 volt line, 2.8 amps for the plus 12, and the minus 12 that the Amiga also uses for sound and things like that is 0.5 amps. And yeah, this is plenty of power for powering just an Amiga. But I plan on occasionally using some expansions and things like that, so it's always nice to have some headroom amperage-wise, wattage-wise, power-wise. Yeah, the RT65B is a bit overpowered. You could get away with using an RT50B, I think is the smaller model with the same voltages, but I like to have a bit of headroom, as I said. So the way I want to arrange this is this just sits in the center of the whole construction, I guess. And I'm going to have, I think I want to have both input and output power cables on one side, I think. So yeah, this is going to be pretty tight actually. This power supply has 2 screw holes on the bottom, so we are going to be able to screw that to the case, and the casing of the power supply is also grounded, so we are going to ground the case through these screws as well, which is an extra bonus kind of thing. I'm also going to add an extra ground lead to the case parts on both halves of the case. Yeah, I think I want a power switch on the front panel and have my cables come out the back. I'm probably not going to use this original power switch. I'm going to use one of the lit ones that you can configure in a way that they light up when they are turned on, which is a nice feature, I think. I love those. And they are also round footprint, so we are just going to drill a hole for these, for this one with a step drill, which makes it way easier to work with. Yeah, so this is what our faceplate is going to look like, I think. And for our backplate, we are going to have our IEC power connector, which is probably going to be somewhere in top 2, because the connections are top half of this connector. It should make it easy to route the cables. And we are going to have our power coming out here for the Amiga. By the way, this connector has both phases of the mains fused, so we can put 2 fuses in here. I put 3.15 amp slow blow fuses in here because the maximum power consumption of this thing is 2 amps. And you always want to give your fuses a tiny bit of headroom, because sometimes these things can draw a little more current while they're turned on in the first second or so. So there might be a spike in power consumption after turning this on. These Meanwell power supplies have internal fuses as well, so this is just an extra layer of protection. And yeah, I kind of like these kinds of connectors. So I'm just using that and put little oversized fuses in there, just in case you were wondering. Let me just take a couple of seconds to thank the sponsor for this video, PCBWay, my favorite manufacturer of prototype PCBs of all kinds. You can just send them the Gerber files from a PCB you designed at home, and you are going to get a manufactured PCB of the finest quality back in no time. They are very efficient in doing that, and they offer excellent service and are friendly people to work with. So I highly recommend checking out PCBWay.com. The link is in the video description. Back to the power supply build. And yes, I am going to use drill and things like that in this video. So there's plenty of opportunities for me to screw this up again. There might be some screw-ups. I'm going to edit out all the swearing. So this basically sits on the, it's touching the front panel with this side here. So I'm going to completely remove the mains section here. So the switch and the power cable, the original one, and the grounding cable. Oh, this has the original grounding ring on there still. That's nice. I'm going to take a picture of the color coding here. So we have our +5, which is labeled +5. We have our +12, which is labeled +V2. And we have our V3, which is our -12. And this blue wire is a ground wire. Actually, we are going to connect, this is the shield basically. It's connected I think it's connected to the outer perimeter of the plug. So we are going to ground that for extra shielding. I'm going to have to remove these, and I used these spade connectors for most of the connections because they easily screw into these terminals and are easily replaced. These are of course crimped onto the wires. I'm going to basically reconnect it like this and reconnect another ground strap on here after the fact and just make a new mains section here basically. Yeah, let me figure out where the screw terminals are and drill some holes in the bottom case. So this is where these are, I guess. Yeah, pretty much. And I'm just going to use some random piece of paper that I found on the ground. It's pretty messy in the lab to trace where the connections are. And this is one hole, the other one should be here. So then we can just trace these. And I'm also going to drill some holes in the side, as I did for my other power supplies, to connect both halves of the metal part together for grounding. Let's just line these up. So yeah, these are going to be all the parts that I have to drill. Yep, that should work. So this is a thing that I came up with, probably not my idea, but I was pretty proud when I came up with this idea. Just a trash piece of wood that I put some rubber feet on, and I'm doing all my work that would otherwise be endangering my workbench here. So yeah, this is my drilling plate or something. It also reminds me a bit of a Jackson Pollock painting, but that's just me. Just using a larger drill to deburr them, which I tend to forget. But it's always a good idea. No sharp edges whatsoever. That works a treat. So now for the layout of these. Front one is just going to be this button here. So we are going to put this as far in the corner as we possibly can. So probably something like this. And I'm going to use a small drill and then a step drill to make it the size of this on-off switch. And for the bottom, for the back plate, we are going to need one for the IEC mains connector. That's going to have to sit on top here so we can route the cables. And yeah, probably somewhere like here. And the other connector is always, I'm also going to put that on the top, even though that's not the best way to do it, I guess. But yeah, that's going to be here. The Amiga connector cable is going to be a round hole that we are hopefully going to be able to fit the square strain relief through that this comes with. But yeah, I guess that can be done with some force. We are going to have to disconnect these, of course. So we can feed this through there, but with some due force, we're going to make it, I guess. This is obviously a square connector, so we're going to have to make a square hole for this. So this is, what's the size of this? 2.5 by 3.2. Oh, it's actually 3.3 rather. Okay. I'm not measuring this very exact because I'm going to make it a bit smaller and then use a file to make it perfectly fit so it sits in there nicely. I guess what I want to use here is the Dremel tool, and this is a drill job, obviously. Yeah, so the inner part of this cable strain relief is around 0.8 centimeters, so we're going to use an 8mm drill for that, I think, and see if we can fit it through there. And otherwise there's still the option of using another strain relief kind of thing. And then that's going to be widened with the step drill, but this is the job I'm most afraid of in this whole build, dremeling this out. So I'm going to mark this pretty nicely with my pokey bit, as I like to call it, my little ale, and scratch the outer dimensions of this into the plastic here. Yeah, so this is pretty close, but we are going to use a key file or some other files to widen this slightly. It's also a bit at an angle, I guess. Well, that's okay. That's one of my builds, so it's okay. Okay, definitely needs some more filing, but not much at all. This is going to look so much better than what I had before. There we go. Yeah, okay. Rather nice. Yeah. And that's the front panel. I just used the step drill to widen the hole slightly. I think it's pretty much straight. I'm not quite sure. This is all I want on my front panel, so it's pretty clean looking, and both my connectors are going out the back. Is it wrong to love step drills in a non-sexual way? I just love these things. Yeah, I guess it's time to at least halfway put this together. I'm going to take a picture of the pin out here so I don't get the connections mixed up. The wiring colors should just be connected to the same outputs, and we should have a proper output on the other end, on the plug. Because this power supply, obviously, it did work. It just looked really nasty, so yeah. The screw holes are just M3 standard size screws, so I'm just going to get some M3 screws from my assortment of screws here, and they shouldn't be too long, so I'm just going with the shortest ones I can find, I guess. Yeah, this is going to work. Yep, that is not going to go anywhere. And thankfully I also have plenty of room for my connector here, and I have enough room to make the connections in the back here. So it's always good to test fit things before you place components. This should actually work pretty nicely. So far it's looking quite good. At this point it's probably a good idea to try if we can fit this Amiga side of things through the little hole I drilled. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. We're going to have to widen the hole a bit. Thankfully, I have this step drill still attached here. So let me see. Now it should be even easier to fit these through there, which it is. Yay! Yes, yeah, that feels much better than before. Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this, but probably with using some pliers and some force. And these strain reliefs are obviously made for square holes. So I'm putting a square piece into a round hole, which, yeah, I already learned as a child that won't necessarily work very well, but it might. It kind of does work. Okay, it's actually not too bad. We just have to, just takes a bit of patience here, which I'm known to have not a lot of, but yeah, it does work. There we go. That wasn't too bad, and it doesn't look bad at all from the outside, which is the main thing here. And I can still move the cable in there, so we need some kind of strain relief in there, and just use this original strain relief for protecting the cable feeding through the case. But hey, nice! Yeah, the next part is going to be making the connections between the mains socket here and our switch and the rest of the circuit. Unfortunately, while I have a lot of these fork-shaped connectors that go to the Meanwell power supply, I don't have any of the cable shoes like that go on these spade connectors, but these are also made for soldering wires to them. So I'm just going to solder to the mains socket and to the switch, because yeah, otherwise I would use the crimped connectors, because it's just more easy to work on and usually makes a really sturdy connection. But soldering isn't that bad at all, obviously. Yeah, we're going to solder to those. Unfortunately, I didn't stock up, because I'm old and I tend to forget things. But these fork-shaped connectors are the more important ones, that are the ones that connect to our power supply. And I have plenty of those. So what we are going to do is to go from the mains to the switch and then go to the power supply. So we are wiring the mains side of things, and we have, this should be our neutral side. If you are looking at this, this should be our neutral. This is our live side, which doesn't matter in most European countries because the mains plugs are not coded. So either one can be live or neutral. But we're going to switch the live side anyway. You could also run the neutral side through the switch. It doesn't matter in this case where I am. So, but yeah, this is the neutral. The neutral is going to the neutral terminal on the power supply, obviously, and it's also going to go to the pin on the switch for the light. The light has a neutral connection, and one of the other pins for the live connection is switched through the light and turns the light on when we turn the switch on. So that's what we want. So the middle pin here is the one for the light. If we close the connection between this and this runs through the light, actually. So that should light up. So we need to go from the live terminal to the bottommost pin on the switch here, and then from the middle pin we should go to our live terminal on the power supply itself. And the ground is going to be connected to the ground terminal on the power supply, and also we're going to run a connection to the metal parts of the case and connect both of these halves together. Should be pretty straightforward. And by the way, people keep asking me for circuit diagrams and things like that when I'm building power supplies. I'm deliberately not posting any circuit diagrams for this because it's so straightforward that I fear that if you don't get the wiring for something like this, you are going to potentially hurt yourself. So please excuse the lack of any schematics for this or any circuit diagram. That's deliberate, so you don't mess around with mains voltages if you don't know what you're doing. By the way, you shouldn't mess around with mains voltages if you don't know what you're doing. This is going to be my ground connections. Going to solder this onto the mains, and this is going to be both halves of the case with ring connectors actually, so we can screw those through the case. And I think I like the idea of having a ring connector on the power supply itself as well. So we are going to crimp on another one of those there. And for the ground connections to the case, I'm just going to use nuts, and these are M3s. And to make good contact, I'm going to use these star-shaped washers that grip into the metal of the case. Okay, the day is saved. Obviously going to tighten this by using some pliers again, but yeah, so far this is looking pretty good. Okay, the other side of the case. Okay, everything's wired up, I think, hopefully correctly. Let me just quickly check our ground connections. This should all be grounded. Yes. We should also have ground on this outer parameter of the plug here. Yes. Ground connections are all there. That's the most vital thing, I guess. Let's get some voltages, shall we? So have this connected to the mains now. Should have light on this switch if I switch it on. Yes. And I can also hear the whine from the unloaded switching power supply, which is something you get. Also, I didn't get electrocuted, so we probably made our ground connections on the right spot there. You should never reach into the power supply while it's plugged in. Okay, let me get some voltages here. I'm turning this on, and we are measuring against ground. This should be 5 volts. Yes, and we should have 12 volts, and our minus 12 should be on this pin. Yep. So we have all the voltages. I'm just not going to stress this for much longer without a load. The connections on the plug, I don't think I need to double check them. I'm rather going to double check the photograph I took of the connections and see if that's all correct, because it worked last time I had this very power supply connected. So we should be good on that side. I'm just going to put some cable ties in and fasten everything correctly. Probably going to add some hot glue to the parts that go through the front and the back panel here. It's pretty sturdy already, but yeah, just for some extra protection. Yeah, pretty neat. Okay, I'm going to add some hot glue here and here and here, just so that we are super safe with these snap-in things not coming out of the case at any time. Okay, so it looks super neat. Front side, back side. But there's one thing I would like to add to identify this clearly as the Amiga power supply that it is. I got some of these stickers recently. It's the Amiga Boing ball in a very stylized, nice version. I want to put one of them on top here, which should fit nicely, I guess. Perfection! Let's power an Amiga with it! So, I now have an actual Amiga hooked up to this. Let's see if we can power this. It should probably work. All the wedge-shaped Amigas take the same power supplies, basically. So, I guess this has a good chance of just working fine. Yeah, it seems to do so. It's booting. Let's see if we get a picture at some point. I haven't even connected a mouse because I'm just too excited. But fortunately, you can hold down the Amiga key and use the Alt keys as mouse buttons, basically. Not the most convenient way of doing this, but we are hopefully going to be able to do the Turrican test, to some extent at least. I haven't even connected a joystick, but let's see if we can load Turrican on this Amiga. Yes, and we even have sound. Winner! Yeah, this seems to work just fine, and I think it turned out better than the old one that I had and destroyed, basically. Sorry for making another power supply build video, but I just love making these, and I have my own kind of procedure for making these power supplies, and I really like it, and the outcome, the results are always kind of neat. So yeah. I have a collection of these power supplies now, as you probably know if you've watched the previous power supply videos on this channel. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was informative. All the links to the things I used, mostly the ones I can find, are in the video description. So if you want to build a similar one, you can get inspired by those. As I said, always be careful around mains voltages if you don't know what you're doing, and I don't want anybody to get hurt because I made a stupid mistake, which is probable, I would even say. So yeah, do everything you do at your own risk. Thanks to my Patreon supporters and also my channel members and everybody else who donated money or things to my channel. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you very much. And also thank you for your thumbs and your comments and your subscriptions, of course. And if you didn't do any of these things, still thank you very much for watching to this point in this video. Hope to see you again on this channel. I'm Jan Beta. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.